Welcome back to Cheddar's Opening Bell. This year has been full of historic events. If you could think back all the way to early February, there was an impeachment trial and the subsequent acquittal of President Trump. Well, now one of the congressmen who sat on the two House committees that investigated and impeached the president has written a book with a behind the scenes look at the entire process. Joining us now to talk all about it is California Congressman Eric Swalwell. Congressman, great to have you on this morning. Thank you for joining us. Your book is available right now. It's called Endgame: Inside the Impeachment of Donald J. Trump. Why did you feel the need to write and publish this book?
Well, thank you. It's a tribute to the courage of people like Marie Yovanovitch and Fiona Hill and Lieutenant Colonel Vindman who came forward. And it condemns so many of the Republicans who told me privately, and I go through this in the book, that they really don't like what the president's doing to the country, how he's embracing Russia, but they were worried about losing his job. And it was also, in a weird way, a children's story, because the only way I could write the book was by, at the end of each day, when I put my 1-year-old little girl to bed, instead of reading her stories, I would recount for her what happened that day with a dictation app on my phone. So somewhere there's a recording of me in a sing-song voice describing what was going on, and she'll be able to enjoy that for the coming years.
I hope you one day publish that. As a mom of a 20-month-old, I could totally relate. But clearly, you have spent time reflecting on the impeachment process. Is there anything that you think that Democrats could have or should have done differently?
I think about that question a lot. And John Bolton has a book coming out right now, and in many ways, that feels like the firemen showing up to a burning building once everything's been destroyed and saying, "Hey guys, I got this." And people are asking, "Well, why didn't you guys get his testimony?" And in the book, I lay out we tried twice. We tried during the House investigation, and also on the Senate side. Chairman Schiff gave him the opportunity to put an affidavit forward, and he refused. And we just felt the urgency to hold the president accountable rather than waiting for the courts. And you're seeing right now, we're still waiting on court decisions around Don McGahn and the Mueller investigation. So we'd still be waiting. At the end of the day, we learned that when you stand up to a bully, he backs down. Ukraine got the aid only once this investigation was launched. And I think that's a call to action for this November, is keep standing up to him until he's out of the Oval Office.
What do you make about the timing with John Bolton's book? I know the president and the White House right now trying to prevent that book from actually getting out. What do you make, though, of the timing and the fact that he wouldn't testify?
He had a real opportunity to save his country. Who knows if more than Mitt Romney would have come forward on the Republican side to vote to remove the president, but I don't think it would have been fewer than what we had. And I, at this point, say it's too little, too late. It seems like purely just a way to stay relevant when we really needed him, when everything was on the line. So now it's really in our hands. It's in the people's hands, who can move from the town squares and the town halls where they're at right now, saying that Black Lives Matter and that equality matters, and move those feet all the way to the ballot box where the most important differences can be made.
On that note, there's growing cries for systemic police reform. You're a former prosecutor. Do you think that the congressional Democrats' plan, which is called Justice in Policing Act, do you think that that'll help DAs prosecute police more easily?
I think there has to be independence between district attorneys and the police. And this is a big step in that it creates independent structures in our communities. But I still think community by community and state by state, there needs to be more separation and independence when an officer involved shooting takes place. I also am the brother of two police officers who work very hard and want to keep our community safe. One of them runs the local police activities league. And I'd like to see our officers work more in those realms on the preventive community policing side, rather than always just beefing up how many patrol officers we have to respond to the worst of scenarios. But this is a big first step in police reform. And we're going to move to rename the bill the George Floyd Act in honor of the late George Floyd, who has moved so many in America to say that Black Lives Matter.
You're also the son of a police chief, right? How has that influenced your thoughts about this? And what do you think about calls to defund the police?
I do believe we need to police the police and reform the police and fix the police, and community by community look at whether dollars that are going to policing could be better spent on schools, healthcare, job training programs. But I do believe that there are certain, scenarios where you need a police officer to show up, and we want them to be there. But I want the police to not only have power. Power can be measured. That's the uniforms, the bulletproof vests, the weapons that you give them. But I want them to have authority. Authority cannot necessarily be measured. Authority is the respect and the belief that they are there to protect us, and that has to be earned.
Do you think that police in general are getting a bad name here? I do hear from some people who say, "Look, to your point, my brother's a police officer, or my father. Not all police are racist or do this." What do you think about that side of things? And any nervousness that no that people may say, I don't want to go and become a police officer, and maybe that was their lifelong dream.
Not all cops are bad cops, but we are seeing that there are too many exceptions. And this systemic racism and these individual and institutional tragedies will persist if we do nothing. I want people to want to grow up and be a police officer, but I hope that we can reimagine what that means, and that it does no longer mean that African Americans are perceived as dangerous and guilty. We can change that with this legislation. It'll be a small part, it'll take all of us in the community to do it. But in Congress, this is a big deal that we can play a big part in to change the way that our institutional police departments work with the community.
When it comes to the presidential race, the Biden campaign has pretty much ended public appearances for the most part. Do you think that he should be out there campaigning more? And do you think that perhaps this will impact his chances in November?
Well, he's ahead in most polls right now, and I think re-elections are always about the sitting office holder. And this president's leadership failures have been exposed on the pandemic front, on this national crisis around policing in our communities, and the economy is the worst in 100 years. So I think Vice President Biden, what he does best is someone who has had dinner with him, who's talked to him at length about issues, is he engages face to face. He's very personable. He's a great listener. And I think he is eager to get back out on the trail, but only once it's safe and not to endanger others just for his own political vanity, as we're seeing with the president.
You've said that it's possible that perhaps President Trump might not accept the results if Joe Biden were to win. How could this potentially play out?
I first started to really think that, and I lay that out in the book, when Michael Cohen pulled me aside when he was testifying to the Intelligence Committee, and he said, "This guy's not going to leave." And I think we're seeing as he tries to use the military to patrol peaceful protests in our country, that we really need to overwhelm the ballot box so that the result is obvious. And if you're a junior Secret Service agent or military officer and you're being ordered to get this unlawful tenant out of the White House, that it's not a close call for you. And it's crazy to say that. We've always had a peaceful transition of power, but this president makes it a realistic chance that it could occur. And so we have to make sure the result is so obvious because we don't know what he'll do or how he'll test us between November and Inauguration Day.
All right, California Congressman Eric Swalwell, so great to have you on. Thank you.